Hi, welcome to the Fantasy Six Pack Network. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. We're going to be talking some San Francisco 49ers and whether or not you should be drafting Christian McCaffrey in the first round. We got Kyle Madsen helping us here from Niners Wire. How's it going today, man?
It's going great. Happy to be talking football early in the morning.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So we're just gonna jump right into it, man. And of course, the big news all the fantasy people want to know about is Christian McCaffrey right? There's a lot of good talk coming out of camp, but after what we heard last year, man, there's a lot of skepticism, around him. And so is he looking like himself again? And then who is the real number two here, especially with Garendo banged up?
Yeah, for me with what I was watching with Christian McCaffrey all offseason was just participation. Because I'm of the belief from a fantasy perspective, even if Christian McCaffrey is 90% of what he was in 2023, you're going to get a pretty dang good player, right? So I've been really making sure there's nothing abnormal about his participation, and there hasn't been. Like, he's not even on a lighter workload, like a snap count. He's doing everything he did camp wise, rest wise, that he did in 2023. So that's really encouraging for me. There's always going to be a little bit of a risk when you're taking a 29-year-old running back who's had as many touches as he's had in his career. There's always that risk, but then you could go back to last year and go, all right, well, he basically had last year off. You had a guy like Saquon Barkley getting 500 touches and Christian McCaffrey getting 90 touches or whatever it was. Less than that. He played less than 4 games, but I wouldn't hesitate to draft Christian McCaffrey this year because I do think that he's healthy. I do think that when he's healthy, he's going to play a lot of snaps. There's definitely a little bit of risk involved, but I think the potential reward is absolutely worth that risk.
Okay. And with Garendo out right now, who's the backup, or are you still just banking on Garendo being the guy?
So Garendo was back in practice on Tuesday.
Okay.
Which is good news. He had a shoulder injury. I lean that way right now just because I thought he was really effective last year, especially as a pass catcher.
Mm-hmm.
He showed some stuff as a receiver that I think really, really matters for another running back to play in Kyle Shanahan's system while Christian McCaffrey's there. So I would absolutely lean Garendo as RB2. The problem is what goes beyond that, because if Christian McCaffrey goes down and Garendo gets elevated to the RB1 spot, he had injury issues all last year. I think in his first start, he hurt his knee, and then he had a hamstring injury coming out of another one. And then in week 18, he hurt his knee and had to leave the game early. The question for me is what's behind Garendo, and that I have no idea. As of at this time yesterday morning, I would have told you it's Patrick Taylor Jr., but he fractured his shoulder. He's out for the year. He got put on IR. Jordan James, a 5th-round rookie, has a fractured finger, and he's not back in practice yet. Corey Kiner, really promising undrafted rookie, has a bad high ankle sprain. He's going to be out for more than a month. So you're probably looking at like Jeff Wilson Jr. is RB3 right now.
That's a name we haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, so that's kind of where things stand in the Niners backfield. It gets a little bit dicey. I mean, I know there's, like I said, there's an inherent risk with McCaffrey, but it gets even a little dicey after him on the depth chart.
Sounds like they might be picking up one of those random roster cuts that we get. Well, that sounds like something that's going to happen over there. So, all right, jumping over here to the receiving room, and it's a different look this year. No Deebo. Aiyuk's on the PUP IR. Jennings has drama / injury. And I mean, now it's Pearsall and who?
Well, if DeMarcus Robinson is not suspended, which given the timeline on Rashee Rice, I would imagine that DeMarcus Robinson's suspension gets pushed out a little bit. If there is one, he's been really good. DeMarcus Robinson's been really effective. So I would lean that way, especially early in the season. Jauan Jennings is I do think he's hurt. I don't think this is a business thing.
Oh, okay.
He came out and he's been participating throughout OTAs. He was participating in camp, acting and working like a wide receiver 1, and then aggravated a calf injury that held him out of OTAs. So I think it's an injury. I think it's very real. I think the Niners are just being extremely cautious given how the Christian McCaffrey stuff went last year. But that said, given how the Christian McCaffrey stuff went last year, I'm not ready to say that Jauan Jennings is going to be there week 1. Shanahan said there's no real concern that he's going to miss week 1, but they also said that about McCaffrey. So Jennings and Pearsall are the very clear 1-2 in the Niners receiving core when everybody's healthy. I think Demarcus Robinson is wide receiver 3. After that, you're looking at like Jacob Cowing, who couldn't crack the rotation last year in a full season. Russell Gage, speaking of throwback names, has had a really nice camp. Robbie Chosen, I know, put up a ton of production.
There we go.
Yeah, dude, it's a who's who of randos. Isaiah Hodgins is on the roster.
Right.
If you're into old Giants receivers, so yeah, man, it's a hodgepodge back there. I would have said Jordan Watkins, the rookie from Ole Miss, who was having a really nice camp, but he has a high ankle sprain. Sounds like he's going to be out week 1. So I think all of this points to Ricky Pearsall, who's been awesome in camp.
Yeah.
All this points to Ricky Pearsall having a really, really big year in that Niners receiving core, regardless of who's around him.
I have been pounding the table for Ricky Pearsall all offseason, and it's finally starting to pick up steam. But luckily, I was able to get a couple shares a little bit cheaper early of him. So not so much anymore. All right. So Brock Purdy, seems like Mr. Consistent, Mr. Cool over there, just kind of takes whatever, so with this new look offense around him, we're dealing with offensive line, changes as well. How's he looking with all of this coming into this year?
He's looking okay as far as I know. The question for me, because I think where Purdy really struggled last year, because he wasn't bad. Like the Niners offense had to fight uphill, but they were still, I think, 4th in yards and 13th in points. And I think they were 2nd or 3rd in yards per play, might have tied for 2nd in yards per play. Like they were still a really effective offense. I think where Purdy struggled last year was knowing his role as the team's quarterback with the injury situation they were facing. It was like Christian McCaffrey wasn't available, and all of a sudden he felt like everything needed to be down the field because that check down option with McCaffrey wasn't there, or a reliable check down option wasn't there.
Right.
I think they had problems with Deebo Samuel and defense is not reacting to him the same way, and him not being quite as effective as he'd been in the past. And I think the result was Purdy holding the ball too long, not trusting his receivers, not knowing exactly what his role was in terms of elevating the offense. And ideally, he would, for the 49ers, he would learn from that and be more effective this year, whether McCaffrey's on the field or not. But overall, like I think Purdy's not a bad player. And from a fantasy perspective, I'm not going to fall over myself to draft him. But I think he's in that group with, again, from a fantasy perspective, with your Trevor Lawrences and with your Dak Prescott's. The question with the Niners is always going to be volume, right? I think they've been like no higher than 26th under Kyle Shanahan in pass attempts. So it's just a matter of whether you think that Purdy's going to be back to that really, really efficient, 8.5 to 9 yards per attempt and throwing a bunch of touchdowns, limiting his interceptions. And that's kind of TBD.
Having McCaffrey there catching passes out of the backfield certainly helps. So that's going to be a big boost to him. And of course, George Kittle still there, balling out as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, with this receiver room, it's basically a brand new receiver room. Like not brand new, but like, it was Deebo and Aiyuk for a couple of years and, some other guys. And I mean, Jennings is still raw. Pearsall is still pretty new. Kittle's the one stabilizing factor here for him. Is this going to be like a big blow up year for Kittle, knowing what else is around him?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see 2018 again where he was setting records, right? Like I'm not sure he'll be Brock Bowers from a production standpoint. But that said, the Niners specifically brought in Luke Farrell, the tight end from Jacksonville in free agency, specifically brought him in so George Kittle doesn't have to stay into pass block as much. He was staying in pass block on like 12% of their pass plays last year. And that was up from, I think, 7.5% the previous 2 years. And so I think you're just going to see more route participation from Kittle this year. And when you look at how much Brock Purdy trusts him, and you look at the target rate, and you look at particularly in the end zone, Kittle's been a player that Purdy really looks to in the red zone. Those are the things that I'm looking at. And it's like, I fully believe that George Kittle is going to be, even if he only plays 14, 15 games, I think you're looking at 1,000+ yards. I think you're looking at 80 to 90 catches. I think you're looking at 7 to 10 touchdowns. And I think you can pencil that in pretty reliably for all the reasons you laid out.
Yeah, that's a good point about the tight end thing. I don't know if I really paid attention enough to that, but I mean, he's already high up on the board, so not really a whole lot more you're gonna move him really, unless you're gonna move him ahead of Bowers and McBride, which I mean, maybe.
I'm not ready to do that. I'm not
ready to do that.
Yeah, the volume's not going to be there the way it'll be in those two.
Yeah, he is certainly one of the more fun players to root for. So if you do draft him, you at least got that. He's a very his personality is out there. It's a fun guy to watch. Yeah. All right. So the question we ask everybody that comes on these shows is there a player in camp that's kind of caught your eye that, the casuals may not know, and so that fantasy managers might want to just keep in their back pocket? Somebody, hit that little watch list button on.
Yeah, I think it's probably Demarcus Robinson.
Okay.
Just a pro, kind of knows where to be on the field. I think Purdy trusts him for the most part. That's one I'd keep an eye on. And then another guy you might be able to get, and he hasn't participated in a ton of camp because of a hamstring injury, but this is a guy you can probably get. Like I always do the thing where I go kicker, defense, and then my last pick in redraft leagues. And with that last pick, a guy like Jacob Cowing, the wide receiver, second year out of Arizona, really explosive, just did not crack the rotation last year. I just couldn't get on the field. It's not for a lack of talent. I think it was just for a lack of knowledge of the offense. And going into year two, I think some of that should be remedied. There's a very real chance that Jacob Cowing, at least for a stretch, especially early in the year, could be one of their 2 or 3 top receivers where he has fantasy value early. And he's a player I'm kind of keeping an eye on just because we talked about the receiving core. There's not a lot of certainty in that group, and you may fall backwards into having the Niners' number 1 receiver if you hang on to Jacob Cowing.
That's always a good thing. There was a guy who I know who always told me, just draft the last 49ers running back in the room, because this was before McCaffrey showed up, but it was always like, just draft the last one, and it always worked. It was weird. So maybe it's the same thing with the receivers now.
Well, or if you want to go grab Jeff Wilson and just be like, hey, and obviously pay attention to who makes the roster and who doesn't,
of course.
But I don't if I'm in a league and somebody takes Jeff Wilson in one of the last 2 rounds, that's one of those picks where I'm like, dang, wish I had done that.
Right.
You might end up cutting him in 6 weeks, but I think he's
or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't even matter. That pick is usually a throwaway anyway, but man, it could be a home run hit. Like that's what you're talking about. So, all right, man. Kyle, thank you for coming on, man. This was great information. I know I learned a lot. Hopefully everybody else did too. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can find you and what you've got going on this season.
Yeah, NinersWire.com is where I'm writing. Candlestick Chronicles is the podcast. That's all 49ers related. I also do a radio show in Sacramento. If you're into Northern California sports, that's on ESPN 1320. Just search that on the Odyssey app, iHeart app, TuneIn app. We're everywhere. We're also at YouTube, youtube.com/ESPN 1320.
Fantastic stuff. All right. If you're still here, hit that subscribe button, the like button, leave those comments. We appreciate it. And jump over to fantasy6pack.net to become an all-access member. You get our award-winning rankings, draft cheat sheet, player projections during the year, DFS, betting content, a whole lot more. Promo code F6PPOD saves 15%. It's there on the screen. And then click this little playlist over here to check out the rest of these team training camp check-ins. See you next time.